So this tutorial is going to talk about adjustment layers and why they're so useful to us when we're editing our photographs after we've captured them on our cameras. Adjustment layers are changeable. They're not written in stone, and you can change your mind, make decisions after the fact that allow you to make adjustments, thus adjustment layers. You can also use them in varying opacities, and you can erase parts of them to show through, much like a stained glass window, so it only affects certain areas of your image. They're just really, really, really helpful and useful to have. Whenever you're working with adjustment layers and you're editing your photo, you're going to be saving your file as a Photoshop formatted file, which means that all of the layers will be intact. You can see on the screen here what your image should look like by the end of this tutorial as you follow along and edit along with me. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we have the original image. The only thing I've done so far is I've cropped it, and that should be the first thing that you do as well. If you need a review on how to crop your photograph, please find that tutorial and rewatch it. But cropping does make the image smaller and easier to save and work with in the program itself. So the initial capture on this photograph was fine. It was exposed correctly and it looks okay, but by making some adjustments and enhancements, we're going to give it a little extra pop, a little extra pizzazz, and just refine it to make it look even better. So when we're working with adjustment layers, you're going to be largely working over here with this layers palette and the adjustment tab here. Depending on your computer, the libraries tab might be clicked. So if yours looks a little bit different and you see this, just click on the tab that says adjustments and you will see these pop up. And you want to be on the layers palette, not the channel or paths. So layers palette, adjustment palette. All right, so the first one we're going to work with is going to be the levels. So on the top row, it's the second one in, looks like a little arc mountain. Click on that, and you're immediately going to see that a new layer comes up above your background layer. You'll also see a new window pop up. This little white mountain and foothills here, this is called a histogram. And the right side is the highlighted side, the left side is the shadow side, the low light. So everything you see in this photograph is represented based on the information that you're seeing here in this histogram. So anything that is dark will be over on this half, anything that is light in the image will be over on this half. And what we want to do is we're just going to tweak it. So we're going to click on the arrows on the right hand side and bring it in till you're just at the point where those foothills start to get a little bit larger. If I bring it in too far, I'm going to block up the black areas and you're losing detail. It just becomes kind of a black abyss, which we don't want. So we're going to go right to the edge of those foothills. On the right side in the highlights, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to bring it right in and we're going to pay attention. If I bring it in too far, it's called blowing out the whites. Again, no detail, just white surface and no information, which we don't want either. So we're going to bring this back and take a look. Now somewhere in there is pretty good. I might lose a little detail on the strongest highlights here, but that's okay. It's reflection on water, so that makes sense. If it's a person's face, you really want to be careful to not overexpose the skin tones. All right, so now once we have something that we're satisfied with, we can click the little two arrows up here in the right hand corner and that will close that window. I can turn the eyeball off to see how much impact that adjustment layer had. If I decide that I had too much or not enough and I want to make more changes, I just click back on the icon and it opens this back up again. And I can say, okay, I want a little bit more punch and I'm going to drag in my shadows a little bit more. So again, as long as you have the adjustment layer intact, you'll always be able to come back and do that. Once you've made this change, go ahead and save your file. So you can do just File, Save, shortcut is Command S, and then decide where you're going to save it. So I'm going to save it in the original folder that I already had it stored in. And at the end, I'm just going to add Edit. And I'm also going to add 5 by 7 so that I know what size it is. The extension is already .psd, so leave that in place. You'll see here later on we can save them as different file types, but we want it to stay a PSD. If I would save it as a JPEG, it's going to take all of this information, smash it down into one layer again. So let me show you. If I go to JPEG and I hit save, all of that information went away and got smushed back into one layer. So we don't want that. We want to save it as a PSD. So go ahead, save your file, and we will move on to the next step. Always maximize compatibility. The next adjustment layer that I want to show you is going to be the curves layer. So this one is again in the top row, but it's right in the middle. And when we click on it, again, we have, this is our current histogram. We have a new window open up. And the useful thing about curves is that it can adjust the midtones of the image instead of just focusing on the highlights or the shadows. So click right in the center, and you'll notice if you bring it up kind of at a 45-degree angle, it'll brighten the entire image. And if you bring it down at a 45-degree angle, it will darken the entire image. Now, I can skew it in other directions, and it's really going to change what I'm seeing. Sometimes that could be useful, but for right now, we're going to just kind of focus on the midtones. Okay, so if I decide I like what it's doing to the top here, but I don't necessarily want the bottom to get too dark, so I'm going to bring this in and show you another trick. If you have any adjustment layer, this will work on any adjustment layer. So you're going to come down to the middle of your toolbar and choose the eraser tool. And then your brush can be controlled size-wise by pressing the brackets right underneath your minus and plus buttons on your keyboard. So the one on the right will make it bigger, the one on the left will make it smaller. I can adjust the opacity up here at the top. So think about it like a paintbrush. You know, you can water your paint down to make it lighter or use it full intensity. So the opacity is going to dictate how much you take away. And I can also and should change my hardness of my brush right here. I'm going to leave my hardness down because I want a soft feathered edge. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start kind of brushing in the area that I want to remove. Now, I notice here that nothing happened. So to correct that, go over to the bottom of your tools palette toolbar, and where it's a white and black square, click the little arrow, 2 little arrows right above it, and once you flip the white to the black or the black to the white, depending on how your computer's set up, you'll notice that that will change. So now you can see I can come in here and I can kind of paint away some of the adjustment layer, and you'll see it right here. Now it has that gray area. So again, it's kind of like a paintbrush. I might want to hit some areas a little bit more, some areas a little bit less. Just to show you, if I left the opacity the hardness the whole way up and the opacity the whole way up, and I clicked, it's going to make a very hard, definitive line on the image. We don't want that. To undo a step, just press Command Z. To go back twice or 3 times, press Option Command Z. Okay, let's see what that looks like on and off. Give it a little bit more density, a little bit more saturation in the color. For this last adjustment layer that I would like you to do on your image that's required, I want you to use the vibrance to see what you can do with color and saturation. So again, it's in the top row. on the right hand side here. It looks like a little triangle. We're going to click it. And with this, what we can do is just pump up the color a little bit. So the vibrance at the top, if I go all the way, that's too much. I can tell it's been altered and it doesn't really look like the original photograph anymore. I don't want to go that far. But what I'm going to do is kind of go too much and then come back. So I want to kind of play. There's 0. I want to kind of play with just giving it a little bit more pop. So somewhere I think right in there is good. And again, we're just going for enhancing the image, not necessarily altering it completely. The saturation can also be adjusted to give a little bit more intensity to the color itself. All right, so let's go ahead and close that. And it's a little harder to see when I turn that on and off. You can see a very subtle shift from the beginning to the end. Now, if I take off all 3 of those layers, now you see quite a bit of difference between the vibrance, the curves, and the layers being applied. All right, once you've done these 3, you can explore some other options. You must include these 3 on the submission that you turn in, but there are a few others that you can play around with. Hue and saturation is a good one to try. The color balance might be a good one for you to explore. Black and white. Let's see. The invert, the posterize, all of these can alter the image in different ways, and we'll explore those in other tutorials coming up. But go ahead and kind of bounce around. You can always delete them if you don't like them. So just to show you how to do that, if you made an adjustment layer you want to completely get rid of, just click on it with your mouse, drag it down here to the trash can in the very bottom corner, and it will disappear. Or on your keyboard, once this is highlighted, you can just hit delete and it should remove it for you as well. Once you're ready to save your final image, okay, don't want to rasterize. Okay, we're going to go to File, Save, and it's saved over top of the original PSD. In order to save the file for turning in for submission, what I'd like you to do is, at this point, take a screenshot. So a screenshot, you're going to hold down Shift Command 4 on your keyboard, and you'll see 2 little crosshairs pop up. You're going to come to the upper right-hand corner of the image, so I can see your rulers palette, and I can see the image. I'm going to click, and I'm going to start dragging to the upper or lower right. I'm going to highlight the image area, including the layers palette, and when I can see all of that, I'm going to let go, and it will take a screen capture of that file or those corrections that you've done, those enhancements that you've done. You've already saved this as a PSD, so then we're also going to save it as a flattened JPEG. So go to File, Save As, and here I have my edit. I have it relabeled this way. It's a PSD, but now I'm going to change the format to JPEG. So it will now create a duplicate copy that is a JPEG format. So you'll end up with, you have your original, that was a JPEG, you'll have your PSD that you added the edit to the back of, you renamed it, and you're also going to have your final JPEG. So that's 3 versions of this same image at the end. If you try to, up here, if you leave this at PSD and you just change this to .jpeg, you're committing identity fraud and it will not save correctly. It'll confuse the program and it won't be able to open it back up again. So all you need to do is come down to Format, change it to JPEG, and it automatically takes care of it up there for you. Again, pay attention to where you're saving it. Go ahead and hit Save. Always save to a quality of 12. So you're going to drag that all the way to the right or type in 12 in that field. Hit OK. And now you have that layer or that file saved to your computer. All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next round.